Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the virtual public meeting for the Downtown Improvements Master Plan. This is the second of public meeting for the project. The first public meeting was held back in January, and it was really focusing on what people thought of the downtown, and they gave us some thoughts of what we should be focusing on as we develop plans. So who you may hear in the background tonight as part of the presentation team is Jean Enright. She's the planning director. Andrew Shapiro, he's the director of community and economic development. Daniel Beckley, he's a planner with Jean. Brian Frazier is with us. He's from North Andover CAM. And from the Beta Group side, you have me, Randy Collins, who will be the presenter. Jeff Maxtudis, he's going to be moderating the chat. Andrew Pichette's going to be the poll launcher, and Charlie Cray is another tech support person in case you're having any issues hearing, seeing, or getting the information on the chats or the polls. So a couple of things. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on the town's website later on, probably tomorrow or the next day or so. I'm going to start off by briefly summarizing the first public meeting that we had back in January. Then we'll introduce some of the downtown concepts that came out of that meeting. Included will be a number of polling questions. So during the course of this presentation, we'll be setting up some polling questions. They'll appear on your screen and you can respond to them. And we also have a chat feature. So if you have a question during the course of the presentation, you can go to the chat feature and send a message, and we can hopefully give you a feedback to that. If you're having any issues with chat or any of them, simply go to the chat icon, push 2, and in the 2 field, select Tech Team, and they'll give you a hand. It's important to know that the chat messages are not anonymous, but the polling questions, your responses to the polling questions will be anonymous. The audience, you folks, will be muted throughout the presentation, so no one's going to Zoom bomb us. The polling questions, basically you simply click your chosen response in the pop-up window and then hit submit, and we'll be able to see what the polling question response is. And what we'll do is we'll probably give each one about a minute or so, maybe 2, to get the responses, and then we'll give you direct feedback on what the percentages of the different responses were. If you're not seeing the polling questions for some reason, we do have a survey that we've prepared. You can send a message in chat to Andrew Pichette, and he can send you a link to the survey. And also, this meeting is being televised right now on CAMED, which is Comcast 99 or Verizon 28. So let's just test the first polling question. So this is going to Andrew's going to send out the polling question, or initiate the polling question. So I see it up on my screen. Hopefully you do as well. So I can see people are already starting to give us a response. That's great. I'll give it another minute or so. Blue seems to be the popular favorite here. All right, Andrew, I think that seemed to work. Again, if there are any issues of people having the ability to answer polling questions or even see it, send Andrew a message through chat. So this is going to give you a snapshot of what the responses will be for the polling questions that are going to come up during the course of the presentation. Now, to get to know who's out there listening to us, if you wouldn't mind answering this polling question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Okay. And then one more. This one is really to get an idea of how you folks at home visit the downtown. So if you wouldn't mind responding to this polling question. Okay. And so a few times a week seems to be the top vote getter. Now let's test the chat feature. So this is just a question. You can type in through chat, where are you planning on spending the holidays?
It looks like almost everybody's going to be home.
That would make Charlie Baker very happy.
It's what we would expect.
Yeah, we're not sharing, well, I guess we are sharing the results of this because it will be on the website. All right. So let's get started. As I said, tonight's meeting is going to start with a brief review of what we heard from the meeting, the public meeting back in January. The meeting in January focused on us giving a presentation of our understanding of the downtown from various different perspectives, from level of service of intersections to pedestrian volumes, evaluating the street trees, and a bunch of other things. But probably more importantly, that meeting was an opportunity for us, the consultants who are going to be developing a master plan, to hear what the attendees at the audience said were their feelings about the downtown. And so they gave us both the pros and the cons. We also then broke out into groups and had a more one-on-one discussion with the attendees. And part of that was asking some questions. And these questions gave us a really good understanding of what people thought. So I'd just like to go through that briefly, because this is really the springboard for how we approach developing the concepts that we're going to review with you. So there's a lot of lights in the downtown, from the small businesses, the sense of community, the farmers market, no traffic light, the Broad Street School development, and the downtown being walkable. From the standpoint of what are the issues in the downtown, it was little nighttime activity, the post office drop box, needing better gateways, the utility lines, more gathering spaces, more trees, seem to be the dominant concerns that we heard. And what changes would you like to see? Better variety of retail, maybe a supermarket, mixed use development, more seasonal activities, businesses open in the evenings, gateway and wayfinding signage, wider sidewalks, more seating, better lighting, free parking, connections to the water, evaluate angled parking, gathering spaces and green spaces, bike racks, and shared use path between the mill and the downtown. So this is really sort of the crux of a lot of what we focused on as we went through and started to develop the concepts for the downtown. So this is our project area. It's a rather wide project area, but it's important to mention that what we're looking at is not just the downtown, but connectivity to the downtown, how people get there. And it's also important to mention that when we were going through some of the early stages of our research, and also during the public meeting, the connection between the Mills area and the sort of core downtown was a very important aspect of what the attendees thought we should be looking at. So I'm going to review with you downtown concept plan number 1. There's 2 concepts. They're basically, the 2 concepts are focusing in on this section between Waverly and Water Street. There's concepts for the rest of the project, but the main differences is really within this section. The first concept is really looking at parallel parking. And what we're looking at is introducing the idea of wider sidewalks, incorporating neck downs at crosswalks, and providing pocket parks, ornamental lights, and more street trees. So in this concept, between Waverly and Water Street, on this section of Main Street, you have currently 54 existing parking spaces, on-street parking spaces. And this concept plan would reduce that number by 4. And a lot of that has to do with looking at additional crossings, some neck downs, and also the narrowing of the street. So here's a zoom in to the Main Street section that's between Town Hall and First and Main. I think you can see the red dashed lines. That is where the sidewalk curb line is currently. And then you can see when you compare that to the colored plan for the sidewalk, there are some areas where we're either widening the sidewalk. Considerable location would be sort of by Boston Chowder, and then where we're introducing a couple of some neck downs. The plan also indicates street trees and ornamental lights, those sort of black dots with a yellow glow around them. And this concept provides for an expanded sidewalk area in the heart of the downtown that can provide pocket parks and areas for seating and additional plantings. As you can see, we're also proposing a new crosswalk. That would be the crosswalk between Town Hall, call it the alleyway between Town Hall that leads down to the public parking in the back. We're trying to make a direct connection between that public parking behind Town Hall and the downtown area. So in looking at that section that I was just mentioning between Town Hall and Boston Chowder, this is your existing condition. The roadway width is about 48 feet in this location. It varies in different locations throughout the downtown study area. What we're looking at is proposing as one concept, reducing that width and having the curb to curb distance be about 34.6. And just in this area, we would eliminate parking on the Boston Chowder side, just basically right in front of that area. I'm going to go back to the plan view. So that would be in that area between Boston Chowder and the Town Hall. You can see the red dashed line to indicate the change in the curb line. And so in doing that, we're also reducing the travel lanes by a little bit so that we can be able to widen the sidewalk area. And you can see there's a rather large area that we get on the Boston Chowder side that can increase the size and create space to do something meaningful for pedestrians in that created space. So a question, this is another polling question that Andrew is about ready to launch. Give it a couple more seconds. Okay, I think we'll close the polling and you can see the results. So what would that look like, that area that I was just describing between Town Hall and Boston Chowder? This is what it currently looks like. And this is what it could look like with that expanded sidewalk area, especially in the area of Boston Chowder. You can see the ornamental lights and ideas from streetscape amenity concepts, from benches to trees, and potential ideas for sidewalk and brick banding and such, and crosswalks. Now, none of these have been written in stone. We're putting all of this out there as part of a way to gain responses from you on some of the things that you like when you look at these renderings and some of the things that you might be concerned with. So that's that rendering. Here's a view with the utility lines out.
Randy, can I interrupt? We did have a question asking about how will this option accommodate bicycle travel?
That's a good question. So I'm going to go back to the cross section. So that you see the travel lanes, driving lanes are 13'6". And Jeff, correct me if I go astray here, but that allows for a travel way for a vehicle and what we call the sharrow for a bike being able to ride within that lane. So
Right.
for comparison purposes, in a really compacted downtown area, you might see a travel lane anywhere between 11 and 12 feet. So in reducing the roadway width, we're also trying to accommodate bicyclists by increasing not decreasing the driving lane too much, but having something that's an acceptable share for bicyclists in the downtown area.
And I'll just add to that, most of the plans here, the idea is to slow traffic down. It's not to reduce capacity so much, but slow the speeds of vehicles down. So it's more in line with downtown activity of pedestrians and bicycles.
Exactly.
And Randy, one more question before we go to the poll. There's a question about when will utilities be undergrounded on Main Street?
Well, that's a good question. I think basically it's still a little ways out. I don't know, Gene, if you have a little more to add on that, but it's part of the considerations for this project. We're in a process between today looking at concepts and anything really happening on the streets is a number of years out. So this is sort of the first step. And from my understanding of what I've been told by the folks in the town, that utilities being undergrounded is probably a number of years out as well. Is that a fair assessment, Gene?
Yes, I would say that's a fair assessment. So it's still under consideration, but the scope of that project would take many years, 6 to 10 years out. So we have it under consideration as we read this project, but it needs a broader discussion certainly, and we're aware of it, we're supportive of it. However, given the scope and cost, we are trying to incorporate and plan for it, but we don't have any specific timetable at this point.
Thanks, Jane. So another opportunity for virtual participation. What kind of amenities would you like to see in the downtown? This is.
You have the wrong. You might have the wrong question up because I see that it says you have trouble finding parking space.
Right.
Does it say that on the screen?
Yeah, it's the parking space question.
Well, that's interesting because on my screen it has the chat question. What do you see now?
Do you have trouble finding a parking space in downtown?
Oh, well, so that chat. Can you take that chat question down, Andrew?
Yep, it's been taken down. I think if people minimize the poll, they can respond to this question via chat.
So this is the chat question. What other amenities would you like to see in the downtown?
In our poll question, the items were generally lumped together, so you didn't have a chance to specify which one. So this is more of a chance to say what you would like to see. Shade, restaurants, retail, more dining options. We have the amenities now. More retail. Nighttime activities, restaurant, more parking, not less. Building appearance improvement, a common area, small grocery store, bike lanes and bike racks, more dining options is coming up a lot, entertainment, outdoor seating, restaurants and retail, it comes up a lot, ice cream stores, trees, bakery, retail. So a lot of restaurants, retail, activity, building appearance, is coming up a lot, and a grocery store.
Okay, good. That's good input.
Those are good responses. Thank you.
So moving from sort of the in front of town hall area towards Sutton Street, here's a plan view of the portion around First and Cleveland. And you can see, again, the red dashed line delineates where the existing curb line is. The road is a little narrower here, so we don't have as much opportunity to add space into the sidewalk. But you can also see that we're maintaining on-street parking on both sides. The neck downs are meant to provide pedestrian safety improvements by reducing the crossing distance that a pedestrian has within the roadway. And here's sort of an image of what it could look like with street trees and other amenities within the corridor. And an image without the utility lines. Now we're getting down to the intersection with Waverly. We do have another poll question. Give it another couple seconds. And while we look at the results, I have a hunch that if I were to specify certain locations within the downtown, the answer may be slightly different. From our observations, there are locations where there always seem to be parking, and there are some locations, by Heavenly Donuts to be coming to mind, where certainly in the morning, parking was a very difficult thing. So, we have one more question before we move on. And this one is, would you like to see electric vehicle charging stations and parking spaces in the downtown? Give it another second or two.
Yeah, it looks like it's pretty split on this one.
All right, let's close this poll down. Now we'll move to the Waverly Main Street intersection. Our general approach here is to try to clean this intersection up, create somewhat of a more conventional intersection than what's currently there. What we're doing is proposing to change some curb lines and move the crosswalk in a more traditional location. The crosswalk currently is about where the red line is that goes across the Waverly Road. And so we're moving that up into the intersection. And then a couple of things that result from this is that we are maintaining all of the driveways and the parking areas that access into this section of the Waverly Main Street intersection. We are able to reduce the area of asphalt and create a small pocket park there as well. I should point out to you that red line, if you didn't know, is where the view of the renderings that we're showing you is from. So this is what the cross section looks like. That red hash, little dash line in the sidewalk in the blue area to the right is where the current curb line is, and you can see the change that we're creating there. And this is what it looks like today. This is what it could look like. One of the things I should point out at this time is that when we're looking at some of these changes to the intersections, when we're conceptualizing them, we're trying to think, in big ideas. But the other thing we really have a responsibility to is to pay attention to how these intersections operate. And so any of these concepts have been tested to a certain degree to make sure that emergency vehicles can maneuver around through them so that we're not causing any potential harm to public safety from that standpoint, or from the standpoint of having trucks and deliveries and things like that be able to be accommodated within the downtown as well. So those things have been kept in mind and have been planned for as we are making these concepts. And here it is without utilities. And then continuing to Sutton Street, the roadway really starts to narrow in this location. There's only parking on one side of the street. There is a easement area. So the crosswalk that you see in the middle of the screen, just to the left of where it says Main Street, there's an easement that, or not easement, but right of way that the town has that goes up to Sutton Pond, which is at the top of the screen, just off of it. And so one idea is to possibly make a path that can connect to the Sutton Pond area. So this is what that might look like. And without utilities. Next polling question. Do you like brick sidewalks in downtown?
Yeah, it looks like 52% of the people are in favor, 26 against, and 21 aren't sure. 21%.
All right, there we go. So now we're going to move over to the other side of the core of the downtown where the Main and Water Street intersection is. The intersection of Main and Water is a very wide open intersection. Again, you can see the reddish dashed lines indicating where the current curb line is. The crosswalk distance, what we're looking to do is to reduce that crosswalk distance to make it safer, and also by reducing the width of the road in this location, slow the traffic down. So that's really that goes hand in hand with the crosswalk distance reduction.
Randy,
So
can I interrupt for a second?
Of course,
There's a few questions about the brick sidewalks and their applications. Can they be used as a raised device? There's accessibility issues with brick sidewalks. Some of the surface can be slick during the winter. And will they be used as entire brick sidewalk or as a border feature on the sidewalk?
Well, I'll take that last question first. What we're showing is a brick border, as I'm sure you've recognized. But we asked the question to get a sense of whether people think that the sidewalk should be all brick or not. The issue of accessibility and slip is certainly an important issue. Brick sidewalks are notorious for heaving and sort of becoming uneven. If we were to go with a brick sidewalk surface, we would be constructing it on a very firm, rigid base so that there would be no heaving, and that problem would go away. And we look at the selection of the brick to make sure that we could reduce slippage as well. It's not a done deal. We're just basically trying to get a poll to figure out what the sense of the community is like as it relates to the brick sidewalks. Getting back to water in Maine. So here's what that reduction could look like. And when I do the switch over from this existing conditions photo to the rendering, pay attention to the location of the crosswalk sign, and then just to the left of it, where the curb line meets the crosswalk. And you'll be able to see how we can start to shave off some roadway space to reduce the crosswalk length.
Randy?
Yes.
Andrew, you had a request to, after the explanation of the brick sidewalk and the benefits and the disadvantages, asked if we can launch that poll question again, if people may change their minds.
We can do that.
Do that, Andrew?
Give it a couple more seconds.
Yeah, so it looks like the yes votes came down a little bit from before. 51%, 26% no, 23% not sure.
All right, let's go back to the Waverly Main Street, Water and Main Street intersection. So this just gives you a sense of, and you can see the roadway here is very wide, and it is an important entry gateway point to the core of the downtown. So having something that both benefits the pedestrian by reducing the crossing distance, but also slowing the traffic down, I think would be an important example of what could be done here and without utilities.
Just say there's a lot of discussion on the chat on the brick sidewalks. So I think that's going to be a talking conversation point going forward.
Okay.
And there's a question about losing parking at the church. And I think we're going to get to that in a little bit.
Yep. As a matter of fact, we're going to get to it now.
Okay.
So this is the section of Main Street right in front of St. Michael's Church. The roadway narrowing here is also being proposed. Also, probably importantly, is pulling the sidewalks amenities, the streetscape, the lighting, trees and such up to this area as well, to try to extend the feeling of the downtown area to this sort of gateway edge, and also providing a more enhanced neck down, which is to the right of the second red bar that is on the right side. And so what we're really trying to do is in the narrowing and making an enhanced neck down at this location is to try to really slow traffic down through this area. The roadway to the right, to the south, is kind of wide. And so it's also downhill, which really creates the conditions for people to go a little bit faster than they should. So in this area, there's currently during Sunday, I know that when the church is active, there's parking on both sides of the street. It's hard to get a real count of exactly how many spaces are there, but let's say there's some spaces on either side in this zone. There's probably, as a result of this plan, a reduction of maybe 5 spaces or so. But I've got a spot continuing on where we'll gain back a couple of those spaces on the other side of the church. But before I get to that point, I wanted to give you a visual of what this could look like. So this is adding in ornamental lights, brick banding. Then we also add in trees when we take the utility lines down, at least in this one. So going on to the other side of the church on Water Street, one of the things that we heard from the first public meeting was the desire to have a much better pedestrian connection between the mills and the downtown. And so the intent here is really to try to make that connection a much more pleasant connection for pedestrians so that they feel encouraged to do that walk between the two. So again, we're talking about widening the sidewalks, adding in the ornamental lights and other streetscape amenities, street trees and such. But probably the major change through here is moving the parking from the residential side to the church side. And the reason why we're putting this concept out there is that with all of the curb cuts on the residential side, you really have a limited amount of space to park cars. But if you were to move it to the church side, then we would gain 3 spaces in this location. So between this side of the St. Michael's and the other side of St. Michael's, there's a net loss of approximately 2 or 3 spaces. And so just to give you an idea of what that would be, The residential side is to the left of this cross section. The church is on the right. The red hat dashes would give you an idea of where the curb line is today. And so we're able to increase the sidewalk width and still provide on-street parking. So this is what it looks like today. And this is what it could look like under this concept. And without utilities. So, a poll question that goes along with the last couple of renderings that you've seen.
And Randy and Andrew have been requested to leave the polls up a little bit longer.
Okay, we can
People
do
have a
that.
chance to reply, think about the question. And Randy, I'll just, there's a question asked, instead of focusing parking on Water Street, is there an opportunity to add a walking path behind the homes on Water and along the pond to the mill parking? And I think that,
Well, that's a little, that's a little foreshadowing to later on in the presentation. We do have an idea for that we want to share with you. Give it another couple seconds.
about 80% of the people have voted, so get your votes in next few seconds.
And there you see the results.
So over 3/4 of the people replied yes to this, and 21% aren't sure. So that's a good result.
And moving down Water Street towards the mill, it's really not as many opportunities to narrow the road in this section. But what we have done is take a closer look at the Water and High Street intersection. Again, you can see the red dash line. It indicates where the sidewalk curb line is today. And what we're doing is looking at providing some neck downs to help reduce the crossing distances, and also gives a little more space to the pedestrians, and also create space for continuing carrying the streetscape amenities down Water Street towards High Street. And then looking at High Street, it does have some opportunities to take a little bit of the side roadway width and turn it into the sidewalk. This is what it could look like. Again, the red dashes are where the curb line exists today. And this is what it currently looks like. And this is an idea of what it could look like. I don't have a one without utilities in it because there aren't utilities out here currently. No utilities. And again, you can sort of see, if you focus on the wall to the left, you can see the space increasing in the sidewalk, which gives a very comfortable area for pedestrians to walk and still allow for the ability to provide some of the streetscape amenities and street trees.
Randy, there's quite a few questions about utilities and phasing of the utilities with the improvement project. And do we have to wait until the utilities go underground to do this project, or would we do the improvements now and would have to rip it up again to put the utilities underground at some later point?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, one approach, if the improvement projects were to go ahead of the utilities work, is we could put some infrastructure in the ground, conduits basically in the ground, and create some vault areas under the sidewalk so that we could be able to put the infrastructure that allows for the utilities to go underground at a later date. That's one way to do it. Adds cost upfront to the improvements project, but it is one way to do it.
There's a few other questions I'd like to give to you now. What happened to parking on the east side of water? It still looks there. Still looks like it's there.
In the last plan view, in this plan, because basically we're not proposing to make any changes to the parking in this section of Water Street.
There was a question about the intersection at High and Water, about being a three-way stop. Can it be a four-way stop? And I think we were suggesting that.
One of the things we are suggesting is that look into the possibility of creating a four-way stop there. I think the other possibility was to maybe go back to what it might have once been with just a two-way along the water legs and keeping the High Street open. But what we are recommending as part of the master plan is to look at a four-way stop at this location.
I know three-way stops, you're correct. That is ambiguous to drivers sometimes. There is a grade issue coming up high to that. So it's a few considerations, but it's something I think we're looking at. There's a question about what can be done for truck deliveries to East Mill businesses to avoid blocking the street.
What comes to mind immediately is working with the business owners to maybe adjust the time of delivery if that's at all possible.
Randy, I might look to John Borghese to speak here because I think there's a plan in place to create a delivery area along the street. John, if you don't mind.
Brian, you might have to give him the ability to talk and be heard.
He is in the he's in our group right now. I don't know, his audio is not working though. He's up as a moderator.
Oh, good. Okay.
He just unmuted.
But for some reason, his audio is not working on his end, maybe. Oh, now we hear you. Now we hear you. Go ahead, John.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We've actually, we have made improvements to this section with regards to the truck deliveries, such that what was approved by the Board of Selectmen, I want to say a year, maybe 2 years ago, we just need to incorporate the painting of the lines and the signage, which due to the weather, we weren't able to complete that. Shifting the deliveries further down past the crosswalk so it's more safe for pedestrian accessibility. So we are hopeful that maybe we'll be able to sneak the striping in and get the signage up, and then speak to the North Andover Police about enforcement, trying to let them know to enforce having those trucks move forward at least past the cross section, the crosswalk in that section. So we're close. We're almost there. We are working on getting those deliveries either behind the building or at least past that crosswalk right there at 4 High Street.
Thank you, John.
Randy, one more question. Shade trees are very much needed on Water Street. Walking from downtown to the Mills to Hills Trail is very hot in the summer.
I would agree. So concept 2, again, basically all the rest of the concepts are the same with the exception of the area between Waverly and Water. So one of the things that we heard in the last public meeting was to look into the idea of incorporating angled parking. And so in the area between Water and Waverly, again, there's 54 on-street parking spaces currently. Going to an angled parking would increase that by about 20 spaces. So what I'm showing you right now is concept 1 in front of Main Street, just to give you a sense of the difference. And there's the angled parking concept. And here's a rendering of what it would look like or could look like with utilities and without. And I'm gonna do it one more time. And without. So, another poll question. Are you in favor of increasing the number of on-street parking spaces by having angled parking in front of the town hall, in front of town hall?
It's about 80% voted. Let's give it another few seconds. Oh, so Randy, let's leave the polling question up. There was a question about discussing advantages, disadvantages of angled parking.
I think so. Advantages are clearly that it increases the number of spaces right there in the core of downtown. Disadvantages are really captured under the realm of what you couldn't do by expanding the sidewalks. So in putting the angled parking in, the sidewalk, I should say the roadway width really pretty much remains the same. So that distance from face of curb by the town hall to face of curb by First and Main remains the same. So what that means is you have less of an ability to increase the size of the sidewalk. Going back to the cross sections in the area in front of the town hall, there was a 7'6" sidewalk on the town hall side, and I believe an 8-foot wide sidewalk on the First and Main side. So we would be increasing that by a few feet. So that allows, either way, we would probably propose streetscape amenities and street trees. It just makes it a little bit tighter to have those types of features within the sidewalk area. And so by doing that, it may make the sidewalk a little less comfortable for two people to walk next to each other at a width of, say, 7 to 8 feet with amenities in that area adjacent to the curb line.
And Randy, I'll add about the operations of the angle space. Of course, it's easier to pull in to an angle space than back up, especially as people get older. I know I am, and I have problems turning around as much for an angle space. So it becomes an operation issue. And now there is reverse angle space, which hasn't been that popular in New England. Some communities have tried it. Some have tried it and taken it out. It's been popular in other parts of the country. But then you're back into the space, then you pull out forward, which some people consider that a safer operation. In any instance, when you're backing up, from that space, you're controlling the street. So you're taking the street control, at least in that one direction.
Right.
So it is a little different operation wise than a parallel space.
All right.
Jeff, there was a request for a revote. I don't know if folks want to do that, but
You want to put the poll up again?
just because there was some explanation after that, and so there was some discussion. So I don't know if folks want to try, given that
Do that
discussion
again.
and explanation, to do another vote.
Yeah. And a good point about the backup cameras. That's true. It makes it easier to back up, but you still have to be careful with the backup cameras. give it another few seconds. 3/4 of people have voted. That's probably good.
All right.
So I think the results changed a little bit. I think there's more no votes now, 62%. Actually, there are no not sure votes. So 60% no, 38% yes.
Okay. So as I said, the rest of the concepts are really similar. The main difference between concept plan 1 and 2 is this core of the downtown and the angled parking versus parallel parking. But we do still have a couple more things. As someone had mentioned, the walking to the mills and making possibility of having better connections. And there's a number of ideas that we're putting out there for people to consider. The first one is a trail that would connect, as I was mentioning a little while ago, down with a bridge across Sutton Pond and getting into the corridor, the old rail corridor, and then crossing into the backside of the Mills property and then making the connection along the sidewalk. What that does is not only give you the ability to connect to the downtown, but also the ability to connect to the existing Mills to Hills Trail. So the blue area sort of is what we're defining as the downtown corridor, Main Street, Water Street to the Mills area. So there's that one option. Another option you can see sort of on the bottom of Osgood Pond is a boardwalk, and that's a possible connection that would get you over to the area again, sort of behind the backside of the Mills on the Osgood Pond side, and then over to approximately the location of where the public parking is behind Town Hall. So there are a number of potential opportunities in looking at trying to do the connection besides just the Main and Water Street sidewalk connection. And here's another polling question.
We may need to make this a chat question. It looks like we're having a technical issue with the polling questions on our end over here.
So if people just want to chat in a yes, no, or NS for not sure.
Yep. I'll try to count them as they come in.
Fast and Furious.
I will tell you that I've seen about a dozen or so responses. I haven't seen any no's yet. They've all been yeses. Does the walkway encroach on Sutton Pond condo?
Well, I guess the way to respond to that is we would either make sure that it's completely outside of private property, or should it need to encroach for access, we would look at an easement or something along that lines. It's really very preliminary at this stage. We're trying to get a sense of if it makes sense to further examine, and if it does, those will be certainly some of the questions that we'll want to be focusing on.
It's almost universally yes on this question. There's some good comments about the alignment of Osgood, Sutton Pond. I'll just remind people there's a lot of good comments. We're not necessarily replying to every comment or statement verbally, but this is being recorded, and we're going to review this in detail later on.
Yeah, I guess a good leaping off point to remind people that this is being recorded and will be on the town's website for the project. And I can put that address, the link up again towards the end of the meeting so people can write it down if they want to. So I wanted to share this slide as well as we start looking at making additional connections between the downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods, and thinking about not only that connection between the mill area and the downtown, but just thinking about how people get to and from the downtown, typically in their automobile, but there might be the opportunity to start thinking about it slightly different. This is a walking radius map. So the center of the radius, the center of the circle is at the town hall. The darker shaded one is a quarter-mile distance out from the town hall. And a quarter mile is, for most people, about a 5-minute walk. So if you're a faster walker, you might do it in 4 minutes. If you're a slower walker, you might do it in 6 to 7 minutes. But you can get a sense, you can see that you can cover a good chunk of the downtown in just a few minutes. And then the outer circle is a half mile, and that's a 10-minute walk. So faster folks are probably 8, 9. Other folks are maybe upwards of 12 or 14. The other reason to show this is in thinking about the parking as well. So if you start thinking about how far you need to walk to get to a place downtown, or if you park somewhere besides on street, maybe behind town hall or in other areas, that, you know, it's not a long distance to walk. I always like to compare this to at least a quarter-mile walk. If you're at a mall, you're probably going to walk if you're not parked close to the door. But if you park, say, midway out into the parking lot, between your car and just about, say, a store in the middle of the mall, you're going to be walking a little bit more than a quarter mile between that. It doesn't sound like much when you think about it that way, but a quarter mile really is a very easy walk. And it does allow you to have access to a lot of the downtown without with parking your car in one spot and getting out and walking. So we're getting near the end, but we probably have this as a chat question, Andrew, and still having technical difficulties trying to get this question up.
Yeah, if we could do this one in the chat as well.
And just would be a good time to remind people that we do have that survey out. So if you wanted to do that, you could always send Andrew a message and he could send you a link to it.
Mostly yeses and some maybes. Looks like most people are willing to walk from these results.
All right, well, that rounds out our meeting.
Randy, can I interrupt? Before we wrap up, there was a question about discussion about concern about safety of narrowing streets to slow traffic down in the downtown. It may not leave room for drivers getting around in and out of parking spaces, snowbanks in winter, bicycle riders, and so forth.
So, as I think I was mentioning earlier, oftentimes you would see in a smaller downtown like North Andover's that the roadway widths would be somewhere along the lines of 11 to 12 feet, which is a relatively comfortable width to be able to maneuver downtown around cars that are backing up into parking spaces or around vehicles. And it really does try to slow the vehicle speed down quite a bit. The width of the roadway that you have out there now, I'm gonna go back a bunch of slides. Hopefully I'm not making anybody dizzy. So right now, the travel lanes are about 16 feet. That's a pretty wide travel lane.
That's why.
It's actually a very wide travel lane in the downtown area. And, you know, the wider a car has to maneuver in a roadway lane, generally, they tend to go a little bit faster. So what we'd be looking to is not to get it to the point where you can't maneuver around cars that are backing up or park for deliveries, but so that we can find a balance between a more reasonable width that encourages people to go slower, that allows us to put some space into the sidewalks, and only impacts on-street parking in a very minor way. So this is, you know, we went from 16 feet to 13 feet 6.
Right, which is still a generous lane. I mean, a typical highway lane on a roadway is 12 feet. So 13.6 is wider, but we're accommodating parking and bicycle use. So we're not really narrowing the lanes here, but we like to manage it so the traffic can operate at a slower, safe speed.
So I am going to do it so I don't have to make people dizzy. My screen changed, Jeff?
No.
What's up there now?
No, thank you. The thank you slide.
Okay, good. So I wanted to just throw this up, not just to end it, because we're willing to stay on for a little longer to answer any more questions, but really to let you know some of the next steps.
Randy,
Will be one.
Randy, can just a couple more things. There's quite a few questions about speeding and has this worked elsewhere, and concerns about if this this would actually reduce speeds for drivers.
Yeah. There's not only in our experience, and I'll speak for myself, Jeff, you can add in your background on it, but it has definitely done that. One of the things that we've done on other projects is to do a speed study where we actually monitor the speeds and to see how fast people are going, and then look at it afterwards to see if there's been a slowdown. I've only done that on a couple of projects, but there certainly has been studies before and after that that I've read as well. But again, it's striking a balance. It's not just narrowing the roads to just for the slowing of the speed down, but is really to provide a better atmosphere for pedestrians within the downtown area as well.
Yeah, and it's being done a lot now in Massachusetts. Actually, Mass DOT has a few programs that are encouraging these programs. One is the Complete Streets program in a lot of communities. So that is a traffic calming. I'm not saying it's appropriate here for this project. That's a traffic calming type application. The other is a shared streets project and repurposing roadways for more walking and biking purposes. So it's something that's become more popular in I'd say the last 5 years or so. So it has been done in several communities. There is a question about, let's see, please display your slide full scale. I can't read the print. So some of the print's a little small, Randy.
Sorry about that.
There's a concern about where the snow will go. New streets concept, snow storage. And there was quite a few questions about redevelopment and how to attract businesses and the uses in downtown, the parking doesn't generate the use. It's the land use itself,
Right,
If-
right.
Unless you have the land use, you don't necessarily need new parking. So there was quite a bit of discussion about that. Oh, if you can post the slide, Randy, with the web page link.
Oh, yes. So just before I do that, next steps, hopefully there'll be another public meeting in January, though I put question marks after that, given the current situation of the way things are going with COVID, though. If we were to have one in January or February, we would look to wrap up the master plan by March or April or so. So stay posted. We'll want to, if we have to do it this way again, we certainly will, so that we can keep everybody informed on the project.
A couple more questions. I forgot to ask this one. Is there a cost estimate at this point?
We have not generated a cost estimate at this point, only because the next stage of getting to a preferred alternative is when we would start to generate a cost estimate.
Mm-hmm. Another question came in. Will the master plan address development density, heights, massing to make retail mixed use more attractive to developers?
That's not part of what our scope has been asked to do. It certainly could be something that would be a consideration, but that is something that we're not doing as part of our work.
I think that's the end of the questions. If anyone would like any other questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Again, we're going to be reviewing all the information here, and we have some really great input on your statements and comments. So we'll be looking at that.
Any other questions, Jeff?
No, pretty much people said, good job, Randy. And look forward to following the process as it continues.
All right, well, if there aren't any more questions, we will wrap up the meeting. I greatly appreciate people taking the time. I know that this is not a normal way to do public meetings, but it's one way that we can stay in touch with you and make sure that as we move this project forward, that the public does have an opportunity to have a chance to look at it and give us their comments. So I want, on behalf of the team, thank everybody who attended the meeting and gave us comments and provided answers on the polling questions. So with that, I would say good night to everybody. And once again, thank you.
Randy, I just want to echo your thoughts. Thank you, everybody, for participating, and stay tuned for the next public meeting. And the more that you can spread the word and the better attendance we have, just the more informed the plan will be. But again, thank you for participating.